Thank you for the introduction. And hello, everyone. I wanted to set the stage for my talk with this nice little duck headed out to sea as we're headed out on the journey of this talk. So Audubon, for folks who are not familiar, is a large multinational bird conservation organization. They do outreach and conservation and policy, all sorts of different things. And like many large multinational organizations, visual identity is really important to Audubon. And they have robust brand guidelines. They've got logos, colors, fonts, templates for just about anything you can think of, PowerPoint, social media posts, etc. But until very recently, there was not a single resource for creating maps, despite the fact that many, many Audubon employees create maps as a regular part of their job. And so this talk is about trying to fill that gap and the organizational cartography guide I created for Audubon, and I hope folks find something useful in here for their organizations and helping other folks in their groups make better and more brandified maps. So a bit more about me I put in this slide because I forgot I was going to be introduced already, but won't go through all of this, but I am really a marine ecologist at heart who's just a map nerd. I liked seeing Vanessa's old maps because I dabble in creating old maps. There's a lino cut map I made where we're right there. I deeply love the Salish Sea, but prior to being a nearshore ecologist at Washington DNR, I was a Dangerman Fellow at National Audubon Society. It's a year-long fellowship program funded by the Dangermans, and you work with the Enterprise GIS team, and I just wanted to give some context for where I was at Audubon when I was working on this project. So the goal of the guide for me was to create a resource that would make it easier for folks to integrate Audubon's visual identity into high-quality maps, and I want to distinguish this from a set of rules or regulations for map making and clearly defining exactly what people were allowed to produce. Nonprofit work is really hard, and I didn't really want to get in anyone's way of their work. I just wanted to help make it easier for folks to make nice maps. So here's the kind of process I used to create the cartography guide. I started out doing a lot of user interviews. I then, from those interviews, created some guide components, got feedback on those, heard all the things that I could improve upon, and edited those components in an endless cycle of never really finishing, as many participatory projects are. So we'll start talking about the user interviews. Especially since I had just gotten to Audubon, I didn't really yet have a good sense for who the users were and what kind of needs they would have. So I use an informal snowball interview approach to talk to a bunch of folks at Audubon. If you haven't heard of snowball interview methodology, it's very nice. You just talk to people who you know are your target audience, and then while you're chatting with them, you say, who else should I talk to? And then they'll point you to other people who you should also talk to. This worked really well for me, given the time constraint I had, and also just not having a whole lot of familiarity with the org. But if you know your org really well, maybe you're a really small group, or maybe you're a huge group and you want to have a more structured process, do whatever makes sense. So this let me talk to kind of a wide range of folks across the diverse range of Audubon network that there is. So here's some of the questions I asked, and at the risk of being obvious, what maps are you making, and how often, and what types of data are you mapping, and for what purpose and audience? And from this, you'll start to get a sense of, are people making the same maps over and over? Is there a lot of opportunity for kind of creating templates, or are things really custom fit? Are you making print products, digital products, or both? And in what softwares or environments? And how comfortable are you with those softwares? And as I mentioned, Dangerman Fellowship, funded by the Dangermans, very Esri-centric organization at Audubon, and the materials that I created are kind of Esri-centric, but hopefully they're useful for folks beyond the Esri sphere. And then, are there cartographic resources that you wish you had? And some people are going to just give you a total blank stare when you ask them this question because they have no idea what cartographic resources they could have. But some people had really specific needs in mind, and they were like, I just don't really understand how to make this legend look nice, and I just use all the default settings, and can you help me get beyond that? Which is so useful. I love it when people know exactly what they need. It's great. And what emerged from that interview process was a sort of tale of two user groups. So On the one hand, there are the super experienced people who are using GIS daily in their work. They're skillful analysts. They already have a good sense of kind of basic cartography. They create map and print and map layouts like regularly. And a lot of them, or a handful of them, like already had their own cartographic workflows and even some templates where they like, yeah, I always put the scale bar here and I always, use this north arrow or whatever. Great stuff like that. And then there are also quite a lot of folks who are newer map makers and they use GIS less frequently. It's maybe not a major part of their role, although they are producing maps. And they maybe don't have a ton of experience or training in designing effective map layouts and generally kind of stick with the default settings. And this is, of course, a continuum, and I think it sort of speaks to the diversity and complexity of Audubon as an org. It does really quite a lot of different work at a lot of different levels. But these were sort of the major groups of folks that I was talking to. And then kind of across the board, I was hearing that most maps were really program or project specific. Like people were making unique things for each item they were working on. There wasn't a ton of repetition happening. So those different groups have different needs. Everyone was interested in resources that would help them incorporate the brand guidelines more easily into their maps, and since that was kind of happening piecemeal across the board and in different ways in different places. And then those newer map makers were also just looking for resources for general map design and general cartography. So let's jump into the guide itself. And I won't go through like every piece of feedback I got and all, but know that I was able to get quite a lot of feedback, and like a lot of the things I show are going to be collaborative, and lots of folks helped me think about what to build. So this is what the cartography guide page looks like. It's a web page. I'll share the QR code at the end so you can look around for it. I built it in ArcGIS Hub. I really wanted it to be a web-based platform because I wanted it to be easy to integrate videos and embed all kinds of stuff and link out to other resources. I wouldn't say Hub is the easiest website building platform or the most flexible, but it was the tool I had at the time. And the first section of the website is what I call the Make Good Maps section, and it's for those users who are looking for just kind of general cartography and general guidance on like, how do I make an effective map? And this section of the guide follows a general map designing process, my general map designing process, and there's sort of a page for each of these little subtopics. And I won't look at all of them because of timing, but I also want to note that like, I am not an expert cartographer, and I've met so many expert cartographers at this conference, and I'm learning so much. And so for this guide, I really relied on trying to not recreate the wheel and like link to lots of other resources and readings and just kind of do my own quick high-level summaries that were like relevant to Audubon's work. And I'm sure I like linked to a lot of Heather's tutorials in the guide and things like that. So we have the define your map's main message section, like think through what you're trying to achieve, because that should really drive the rest of the process. How to add good data, both what the authoritative data sources internal to Audubon were and some good places to look externally, and then how to design your map, and then guidance for specific map elements. And so like this is just one of the items I have in the Design Your Map page, is an Audubon-specific example of how to create visual hierarchy, starting with a simple base map, adding the most important layers, which in this case, I think this is red-tailed hawk counts from the Winter Raptor Survey program, and then adding some contextual layers. These light green layers are important bird areas, and there's more descriptions and links and so on and so forth in the guide. And then again, Audubon-specific examples for configuring map elements and how to kind of get beyond the defaults, because I think that's where a lot of users were feeling really stuck. So like on the far side, the map legend that could use some love, that's like the default ArcGIS Pro legend that gets populated. And then just a quick and easy way to improve it a little bit, help make that feel more accessible to folks. Oh, and I will also say, yeah, Vanessa's talk was so awesome, and I tried to weave in like links to accessibility and how to think about color and fonts and all sorts of things like that accessibly throughout the guide. So let's look at some of the things I created that are actually the brand-defying resources, how to make Audubon-style maps. And I split these up between resources to use in desktop in ArcGIS Pro and resources to use in web-based products. So I created an Audubon-specific ArcGIS Pro style, and if you haven't used Pro styles before, they are so awesome and they can save you so much time. You can load all of your colors and color palettes and text styles and points, lines, and polygon symbols right into a style file. And then you can publish that to your platform or just make it available as a file download, and then users can add it into their project. And once they add it to their project, all of your styles are going to pop up whenever they go to symbolize anything. And it's just makes it so much easier for folks. They don't have to go and copy all the hex codes and like think about how to create the color ramp and things like that. Also in the ArcGIS Pro resources, I have instructions and examples for how to use the brand fonts in maps in Pro, and like a lot of folks like needed help loading custom fonts into Pro, which is understandable. It can be a little complicated. And then like how to thoughtfully place the logo and providing examples for each, I think is really useful. This is a map by Kaylani Bonis Erickson, who's the California GIS program manager. Definitely one of the super experienced users I talk to a lot for this project. So some of the web-based resources I created some custom vector tile-based maps using the vector tile style editor, which is really easy to use. There's a lot of tutorials for it in ArcGIS Online. You can start with a existing base map or create your own and configure all the colors just kind of to your taste and to your brand's look. And then once they are shared with your organization's base map group, they're going to be available to all your users in Map Viewer and also in ArcGIS Pro, so that they can just go with a click of the button, switch their base map to your brand's style base map. This one was super fun, and we got a request for this custom projection base map. So Audubon works across the hemisphere, and this projection file had already been created for the Bird Migration Explorer, which is a very big data visualization GIS project that Audubon did. So for that one, it's a little bit of a different workflow. We created it in Pro and published it to ArcGIS Online as a vector tile, and then shared it with the base maps group, and it's the same thing where it's just available now, and so users can go in and grab this project. And we folks from Audubon Americas really wanted to be able to use this to show work spanning the hemisphere. Similar to the Pro style, I created a web style that is basically just the Pro style published to web as a web style. It's a little bit more limited than a Pro style, but it does a similar thing of just putting all your brand colors right at folks' fingertips. So when people are logged into your organization, they're going to be able to access all of those colors that you want them to be able to grab quickly. Created some story map templates using the appropriate brand fonts and colors, and just making it easier for folks to start out in the right style. And then an experience builder template as well. This is super simple. It's basically just a header bar with the logo linked in place and all of the brand colors configured into the color palette. Lastly, I had print and web galleries in the cartography guide, and this is a really nice chance to like highlight some of the great maps that your colleagues are producing and that folks are producing using the brand guidelines, and it's really nice, I think, to show examples. It's so much harder to like start from scratch and make something look good, but if you have an example for an effective way to kind of use some colors or use symbols, it's just a lot easier place to start. And yeah, as I mentioned, this was a project I did during my year-long fellowship, and I really only had a couple months to work on it, and there were so many more ideas I had. I would have liked to set up some layouts for one or two of the most common maps. Like I said, there were generally like a pretty wide range of things people were making, but I did hear like one or two things where I was like, oh, if I could make that, people would have definitely used it. And these are just, I'm just running through these in case you all are working on a project like this, and you can benefit from me wishing that I had time to do these. I would have liked to do more like outreach sessions to help folks make the most of the resources in the guide and get more specific feedback. Mostly we like circulated things through Slack and our newsletter and then got a lot of informal feedback, but I think it would have been cool to have more conversations as I was building it. Adding some content to design tasks common to Audubon's work, like lots of our scientists are mapping bird migration, and there's like a lot of great work out there about constructing flow maps, and I've been thinking about that a lot for the Gorilla Cartography project for the Atlas, and so much more. And this is that's what the content I have for the cartography guide. I can't leave a microphone without mentioning kelp forests, and if you haven't had a chance to check out the maps in the map gallery, you can go learn about kelp forests in Washington, and also there's like so many amazing and beautiful maps in the gallery, so go check those out. And thanks. That's what I got. Yeah. And I want to thank Ryan Hobbs, who's the fellowship manager and helped so much with this project and so many things. So, yeah.
We do have time for a couple questions. Hi, thanks so much for that awesome talk. Yeah, I was actually curious about the colors that you ended up picking. So I think one of my struggles is like my organization has its own like 2-color brand, and then now I'm trying to come up with like map colors that I'm going to be using. And I was curious about your process of picking those and having them aligned with the Audubon brand.
Yeah, so Audubon already had like 6 different colors that were the official brand colors, and then I worked with the design team and like looked at some examples that the design team had already put together to try and just basically take those colors but play with the saturation and the value to make them like work nicely together. But yeah, if you already have like a few set colors, you could go in and mess around and find some color palettes and then have like your base colors and then think about playing with the value and saturation to like make them all work together nicely. Thanks, Kiara.
So just to follow on from that, then what did you do for the thematic maps and color ramps?
Yeah, so I built color ramps like in ArcGIS Pro, and I spent quite a while fiddling with them, just going, basically I started out having them go from the base color that was like the brand color, I would have them go from like all the way fully desaturated and fully bright to all the way fully saturated and fully dark. But then I found that I needed to go in there myself and actually like put that palette on a couple of different examples, because I realized like some of them weren't contrasty enough or they were too contrasty. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. I'm happy to like show you more if you want to look at it. Thanks.
We do have time for one more question.
Hi, thanks for the talk. It was great, and I work for a similar organization with a lot of users and 2 types of users, like you mentioned in the beginning. And we're kind of heading down the same path. We haven't gotten as far as you have. But one of our concerns or thoughts in going to it is you have the advanced users and the users that dabble in it, and making the appropriate layers available to the people who just dabble in maps.
Mm-hmm.
And with the look and feel looking so refined, was there a concern that you're going to start putting maps out for the organization that maybe had the wrong streams layer on or had the wrong other stuff? Or did you limit their ability to also access certain data sets?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. And I would say on the whole, like, no, I didn't really, in the role that I was in, I don't really have any sort of control over what people actually produce, right? I'm just doing my best to try and help them produce the appropriate things. And I think Audubon already has a curated, like, authoritative data sources that, like, these are our sites and these are our work boundaries and things like that. And so I made those available in the, like, add good data section of the webpage so that hopefully folks would know right where to go. And I think there's already a whole hub on like Audubon data stuff, and then trying to and similarly, like in that add good data section, pointing to the external authoritative data sets that we use most often and we turn to most often. But yeah, Ryan actually manages a lot of the authoritative data at Audubon. So if you have questions about that, you can talk to him. But so since those are mostly like live feature services, they're like managed by Ryan and et cetera. And so they're like, it would be really hard to use the wrong version if you were going and just grabbing the feature service. Yeah, which is hopefully what people will do after reading the guide.
All right. Thank you again, Gray.
Yeah, thanks everyone.